It is so painful to watch someone you love get so obsessed with romance that they're like no longer in reality. What can you do when someone shows signs of extreme limerence? Limerence is a state of obsession or infatuation with someone who's generally not really with you. One of the key symptoms of limerence is that the limerent person will search and search for signs that the person really loves them. They'll be looking for clues and hope against hope that it's real. That's how you know it's limerent. Now, we've been talking a lot about limerence on this channel, but this question today is, what do you do when someone close to you is throwing away their sanity and their life on obsessive love? So I have a letter here from someone I'll call Martha, and she writes, "Hi Fairy, I'm writing to you because I'm super frustrated with my sister who keeps listening to the words of tarot cards, but not me. We both have Cptsd due to an emotionally abusive and neglectful dad and neglectfully codependent mom. But for whatever reasons, I went on to have mostly secure romantic attachment and healthy relationships. My avoidance shows up in work and friendships. My 29-year-old younger sister, however, is the reverse. She's never had a relationship, never had sex, and never even been kissed." All right, I'm just circling this to make sure I come back to this, because I'm going to read this letter once through, then I'm going to come back and see what we can discover about what's in your letter and see if I can help. All right. "Because of her lack of experience and avoidance from putting herself in situations where she could meet an available man, she basically sits at home and pines after two boys she's been obsessed with since high school and is convinced they both have strong feelings for her, but thinks they're shy. They were nice to her when everyone else bullied her, so I think this is the closest to intimacy she has ever known. She literally doesn't know any better. But the catch is, she hasn't even hung out with either of them. One of them she hasn't seen in a decade. The other dated two of her friends, so she was only around him when he was the boyfriend of one of her friends. She told me she recently friend requested him on Facebook, and he rejected her request. She used mental gymnastics to conclude that he rejected the request because he's shy. She tracks both of their Facebook statuses and is convinced every vague status is referring to her. The other day we were talking about the boy who dated her friend. She said that she thinks he's secretly in love with her. I asked her why, and she said because her friend and the guy kept it a secret that they were hooking up and didn't want her to know. I explained to her that they must have kept it a secret because I'm sure her friend didn't want to hurt her. She said, well, I think they hid it because he has strong feelings for me and he's too shy to say something and didn't want to ruin his chances with me. It literally took every ounce of energy in me to restrain myself from screaming at her that he just doesn't like you, can't you see? But I have to walk on eggshells around her fragile insecurity and delusion with how I deliver truth. The reason she's so sure this is the case is because of tarot card readings. The cards always allude to vague statements like, someone wants to be vulnerable with you, but they're holding back. I try to explain to her that if a guy likes you, it's simple. They'll message you, check in on you, and eventually ask you for a drink on the weekend, and then to the movies, and so on and so forth. But for years, she's been listening to the cards and not to me. I hear you talk about how spirituality can enable Cptsders from healing, and it can, I guess, inhibit us from healing, is what you meant there. And it reminds me of my sister every time you say that. It's frustrating talking to her because I feel like I'm watching someone who has so much value slowly become more and more delusional, and it's scary. Her behavior and line of logic is not that dissimilar to the thought patterns of stalkers. I feel like trying to reason with her doesn't work. I suggested she check out your channel, but I'm sure she still hasn't. I don't know what to do to prevent her from going off the deep end. All right, thank you for writing in. I'm going to go through your letter again, and let's just go through and see what meaning we have here. You're very frustrated with your sister, and just the fact that you're frustrated means you have an expectation that she should have her head more together than she does. And what I'm seeing from the outside is this looks like mental illness. Now, I'm not a therapist. I can't diagnose this for you, but I did a little reading to look up. And the thing that I read about in order to understand this is called delusional disorder. And it could be someone who believes that people are against them, or it could be someone who believes that people love them from afar. It kind of fit what you were talking about, and you might want to look into that and possibly talk to a professional about it. But that was helpful to understand. And when I was reading about it, what I learned is that delusion disorder can sometimes be a sign of a more serious mental illness, something like schizophrenia. And again, I don't know if that's what it is, but the fact that you're worried about her going off the deep end, that she is losing touch with reality around this stuff, I think it's a real concern. I think it's appropriate for you to take some steps to get more information. So I'm going to tell you what I see just as your peer, and you can talk to a therapist about what would be a professional point of view. So you had said you both have Cptsd, there was abuse, and so that's so understandable. Codependent mom who was also neglectful. So anything that you told me was a struggle for either you or your sister would be immediately understandable because of that. So it's helpful to remind ourselves that under these circumstances, when people are acting as if they are willfully trying to be crazy, that sometimes this is stuff beyond their control. And so it helps to pull back the frustration and begin to just look at things for what they are and to figure out if there's something that you can do that's helpful or a boundary that you need to set. All right, so your sister's 29, and this is interesting. She's never had a relationship, never had sex, never been kissed. So that's also, that would be called intimacy anorexia. Some people might be actively avoiding it. She seems like she's not actively avoiding it, but in effect, her fantasy that somebody loves her from afar and is any day now going to come in and be with her is the thing that's putting up an entire wall against her having any kind of a real relationship. But because of her lack of experience and her avoidance, she sits at home and pines, and that is so sad. And the obsession's been going on since high school with these two guys who were nice to her. And this is the closest thing she's ever known to intimacy, you suspect. Okay. But she's never hung out with either one of them. One she hasn't seen in a decade. The other dated two of her friends, so she's only around him when he's the boyfriend of one of her friends. And so she has friends, so that's good. But for whatever reason, her Facebook friend request was rejected by this guy. So there's something about her behavior that he already was onto, was not into this. It sounds like a horribly difficult situation. And it also sounds like possibly she's getting worse over time. Is that what you're describing here? So that's another sort of red flag that it means it's time to consult a professional. She tracks their Facebook status, and she is convinced that every vague status is referring to her. So that's not only delusional, it's limerent. And we talked about limerence here. We talk about it a lot on this channel. It doesn't always look this far-fetched. You know, limerence can look a lot more normal or innocuous, but it is that obsession on somebody that you're not actually with. And one of the key signs is looking and searching all the time for signs that they feel the same way. Like maybe they're speaking to you in code through pop songs or through things they post that there's a hidden meaning in it that you're supposed to know. If you listening to this video find yourself doing that, it's time to consider that maybe you have limerence and that you may not be completely delusional like this person we're describing here. It may not have gone that far, but it's on that spectrum. And it's a Cptsd thing that we do. That it's like that impulse to love is there, but the ability to connect it up with real people gets kind of messed up from the trauma. It's sad, but it's common, and it's not your fault. All right? It's not your sister's fault here. And so you explained that the reason that her friend might have been keeping the dating situation secret is not because the guy really has feelings for her, but because it would be weird, it would hurt her feelings. So you say it's everything you could do not to scream at her like, look, he just doesn't like you, can't you see? And she can't see. And I totally get the urge to scream, and I applaud you that you haven't, that it took every bit of your energy to not do that, because you know this is like talking to a small child or somebody who has dementia, that they're believing something that's not happening, and it makes no sense to be angry at them. All right, in this case, I think your sister is, you know, there's something wrong with her reasoning. Now you say part of why she gets so sure of this is tarot card readings. And, you know, I gotta say, I see this again and again with occult type things or divination, where somebody's trying to get an answer by, I don't know, throwing rocks or runes or tarot cards, trying to get a secret meaning out. Now, I don't want to slam anybody's spirituality, but if you're using something like this for the purpose of trying to get the answer you want about somebody who's actually not with you, where the objective outer evidence is that this person isn't into you, they're maybe with somebody else, they haven't responded to any overtures from you, they have left you, and you're using these divining, trying to divine an answer supernaturally out of it. If that's how far you have to go to hear what you want to hear, it's time to ask yourself, are you being limerent? So in this case, your sister is using tarot cards to hear what she wants to hear to keep the limerent fantasy going. So then you talk about how sometimes the readers of the cards get these vague statements out of them like, someone wants to be vulnerable with you, but they're holding back. Okay, that is a little fish hook with snags in it that is designed to get a limerent person to have hope. You can really manipulate somebody by giving them hope when they need that, when they're sort of just trying to hold their lives and their sanity together with this idea that's not really real, that, you know, the reason this person isn't paying attention to you or returning your calls or texts or anything is because they want to be vulnerable with you, but they're holding back. That's a manipulative statement, and it's so great that you see it, you recognize it, and you're there kind of anchoring reality for her. All right. And you try to explain to her, if a guy likes you, that's right. I say this all the time, right? They will call you, they will message you, they will say they like you, they'll check in on you, they will ask you out. That's how you'll know that they like you. But for years, she's been listening to cards and not to you. And you know what? It's interesting. Twice you say she's not listening to you, but you know what? Don't take it personally. She's not listening to anything on this plane. She's listening to what she wants to listen to, and there's something in her that is holding on to this for whatever reason she has. And I don't think that this is the level of problem that, like a sister or an ordinary person, why would we know how to deal with it? This is a job for a professional. So yes, you have heard me talk about how spirituality can enable people with Cptsd so that they can avoid healing and hold on to a delusion. And it's frustrating for you because you're watching someone you value become more and more delusional, and it's scary, and I don't blame you. It is scary. In the research that I did, what was suggested for people with delusional disorder, if that's what it is, I can't diagnose it, but what was suggested is that the person who's accompanying them, that would be you, the person who's in reality, is that you begin to say openly, but maybe not with a whole bunch of, emotional drama, just to keep saying what you see. Say, yeah, I don't see that. I notice he didn't call you, and just keep being straightforward about what you see as the delusional behavior and what you think needs to be done. And you can say, I think this is a job for a therapist. And I saw it recommended that people go to family therapy for this, just because loved ones like you can be so helpful in recovery to keep saying what's real, to just keep saying what's real and not go along with the fantasy. And I think sometimes a person in your position really needs support, maybe even professional support, to know how to do that, like kindly, lovingly, helpfully, is to speak reality and just keep reminding somebody, yeah, that's not what's happening. That is not what's happening. That is not what they just said. I think you need help. I hate to just leave you out there, but you have the internet, you have a way of looking up professional help, and I'm really going to urge you to see if you can support your sister with professional help for this, because you're right. If it continues to progress, it would complicate her life beyond the point where she'd be able to care for herself. That's what it looks like from the outside to my untrained eye. All right? So good luck. If any therapists are out there, I hope you'll weigh in on this and make some professional suggestions about where our friend here can look to get support. Now, if any of you watching this feel that trauma from your past has maybe pushed you in towards the edge of limerent thinking, that obsession with people, come take a quiz I've created for you. I have a whole series of quizzes on my free tools page. The link to that is down below in the description section, as well as links to all my courses and some other things that you might find interesting. Now, if you've been in a position of wondering if you should help somebody who's struggling, I have a video lined up about how to help somebody with Cptsd. It's right here. You can check that out, and I will see you very soon.